AVC YouTubers, Tony here. Tony's LPs are us. Thanks for stopping by my channel, and I appreciate all the subscriptions and the likes. And if you haven't subscribed to Tony's LPs are us, and you like what you see here, or you like some other videos that I've done, please consider subscribing and liking. Really helps us out, and I really appreciate it. So on to this video. This video came to me because I was talking to a few people at a record store a few weeks ago. And whenever I encounter younger folks, I always, I start talking to them. They see me looking through the vinyl. They see me looking at the dollar bins, and I tell them, this is a good record. You should pick this up or whatever. And I always try to get on the subject of how do they take care of their records. So I usually ask them, what do you use to clean your records? And that's all over the map. Not too many people have a vacuum, VPI vacuum clean, record clean machine, or even an ultrasonic clean. I'm talking to young folks. So they're just getting into vinyl. They inherited vinyl from an uncle or from their parents or from a friend or whatever. So cleaning their vinyl's all over the map. I usually give them some tips on how to take care of their vinyl. And then I talk to them about how do you take care of your vinyl in your home, in your home environment. And that's all over the map too. So I started giving them some tips. And I thought about that. If these folks do not know how to properly store or house their vinyl at their house, maybe I could do it on my YouTube channel, and maybe it'll help out some people. A lot of these are probably to the audiophiles, just plain common sense. We do it without even thinking. It's part of our DNA. I've been doing this for a long time. I've always taken care of my records. I have records that I've had since high school, 50 years, and they are still in tip-top condition because I always adhere to these rules. And I worked in a record store, so I knew how to properly store and house records, from early on. So this is about 12 tips, and I'm going to talk about them. Tip number 1 is always store your records on a shelf vertically. Do not pile them on top of each other. You want to store your records, like you see here, vertically. And a lot of these have plastic sleeves on them, which I'll talk about. You do not want to store your records as such. Now, this isn't a bad pile, but I've seen records stacked 6 feet tall. And what that does is it actually will warp the record inside. It'll start to bowl it. It'll start to bowl the record, and it'll definitely ruin the spines. And if it's a gatefold, it'll crush that spine. The weight of a record is just intense. One record could weigh a pound. So if you think about it, 50 pounds on this, 50 records, not a lot, a stack like this. So always keep your records vertical, and that'll save you a lot of anguish later on. You will not find a record that you picked out, you went through your pile and you're gonna play it and the thing's wobbling or the jacket's crushed. Next is keep your LPs, when they're stored on a shelf such as this, out of direct sunlight and away from any external heat sources, such as an air vent or definitely a radiator, or, near a fireplace. Some folks I've seen have a beautiful fireplace or a home heating stove that's a wood stove, and right in a few feet next to it, they have their records, and those records will be susceptible to heat. So keep the records away from any heat source. And another tip, never keep your records in a parked car that's sealed up in the sun or in a hot climate, hot season. If it's in the wintertime, those records are going to be okay. But a sealed car, even with the windows cracked, can have thousands of degrees in there, and that's going to warp your record. We always got records brought back to our record store. When the people come in, they say this record's warped, and we knew right away that they kept it in their car, in the back seat, in a bag, and it just melded. It just folded, okay? Do not store your records, number 3, do not store your records in a humid or wet environment, such as a damp basement with a sump pump that's always running, or in a humid environment. If you live in the tropics, if you live in some parts of Florida, where I am, it's not really humid. We have air conditioning. But if you don't have air conditioning and you don't have a dehumidifier, your records will, the moisture will get to those jackets, and those jackets can tend to stick together. They'll tend to get soft, and that will decompose the cardboard slowly but surely. So keep your records away from any humid or wet environment because those records will stick together. If you have a dehumidifier and you think that you're in a humid area, use the dehumidifier because that helps. I have a dehumidifier in my basement and it keeps everything dry. And a basement's probably your best bet because it's always a current, a constant, consistent temperature. Do not stack your LPs too tight, which is number 4, on a shelf. Here you have some room. These are kind of still too tight, but do not stack them too tight because what will happen is the records will compress. You'll have ring wear. Again, you could ruin your sleeves. It's hard to take the record in and out when you're pulling a record to play it. So if you're on a shelf vertically, which is the way to do it, a secure shelf, which is the way to do it, don't stack them in too tight. I know that's always an issue. I have to buy more shelves. It's definitely a problem. So if you start off with the right idea of not to stack them in too tight and pack them in too tight, you'll be better off. Now, number 5. Now, this you don't see too often, but if you're storing your records in a basement or in a living room or etc., make sure that they're not stored under a water pipe or, say, on top of a bathtub on this, which is the second floor, or in a condo association. Make sure that the records are not stored under a ceiling that has pipes or another, type of room up top that could leak, because that leak could happen overnight and you will ruin all your records. It'll come right down on your records. So try to, if you can, some of these things aren't always possible. If you can't do it, what I suggest is you do is that you keep a plastic sheet over the top of your records where you can't really tell it's a plastic sheet. But if there's, God forbid, because that's a killer, those records, for me, if the jacket of the record is ruined, I don't want it anymore. Even though the vinyl may be good, but I want that jacket. I'm a completist. So keep away from water pipes, and definitely do not store underwater pipes in any type of thing. Also, on the ground level, keep your records away from an area that has a hot water heater in it. Hot water heaters tend to leak. They leak when you least expect it. Life expectancy of a hot water heater could be 8 years, could be 14 years. Sometimes they just break in 4 or 5 years, and I've had them. And that water in that tank will seep, and it'll get to your records somehow if your records are not above the ground. So not by a water heater and not under water pipes, okay? And if you're doing shelves like these shelves, you could get the shelves from IKEA, you get the shelves from Walmart, you get bookcases that fit records in nicely. Always secure that to either the wall or make sure that it's sturdy enough to withstand the weight of those records. Like I indicated, a record could weigh a pound each. Some records weigh more, especially the 180, 200 gram vinyls. They weigh a ton. If you have 50 records on that, you could do the math. It's very heavy. And you don't want that record collection to sway forward or sway to the side, and those shelves are kaput, and you're going to have bent records. You might have cracked records. So always make sure that your records are secure, and get a strong record shelf. Don't get the cheap ones. Go for the extra money. Get the ones that you have at IKEA. You can look them up. People have tutorials on shelves on YouTube. Okay. Now, this is another tip that I didn't think about when I was collecting vinyl, but I was lucky because I always kept my vinyl in a vertical position. But when you get a used record and you have sleeves such as this, paper sleeves, you might be able to see that these are turning yellow. I just pulled these from an LP I just cleaned that I had down here. What you want to do is you want to pull out any paper sleeve that's even a new paper sleeve, unless it's polyline. Some of the polyline sleeves are good, and the record companies that give you that, I applaud that because it's a little extra cost to them, but it really keeps your records in really good condition. What I do is I replace these with either a new white polyline sleeve that you see here. These are basically white polyline. They're inexpensive. Or you could go with these type of sleeves. They're similar to a MoFi rice sleeve. I don't get anything from these companies. I'm just giving you an example. There's plenty on the market. And what you do is you just replace that sleeve with one of these. And I'll show you what they look like when there's a record in it. Also, if you have an original inner sleeve that's a custom sleeve, I take them out of that custom sleeve as well. They're paper as well. And I put them in one of these rice sleeves. And I always stick the inner in that record. If it's a generic inner, I'll just toss it. But if it's an inner that has ads, like say you bought a Beatle, an old Beatle record, and it has the catalog, or an old Elvis record, it has the catalog, I save those and I put those in a new sleeve, but I save those inners inside my sleeve. And I'll show you what I do with the inner sleeves. For instance, what I do is here, this is a classic, I've shown this many times. You can see I have this, and here's the outer sleeve's important too. Outer sleeve will keep your records in crisp, really vibrant condition as they're on shelves. And some folks put the jacket in the sleeve, and then you'll place your record as such this way. Always put it this way so that the record can't roll out with the opening to the inside, so that the record can't roll out accidentally. And I keep it this way. I never did this in the past, but lately this is how I store my records, because I can pull them out. I'm not going to damage the spine. I'm not going to damage the seams on these older records. So that's another tip that you could keep in mind. That's just something else that you could think about. Always use outer sleeves. I have a bunch of outer sleeves I use. These are really light. I think these are 2 millimeters. They're very nice. They always make your records look great. They look better than they do without the sleeve on it. And they don't take up much room. You have 50 of them, it's this much on your shelf. I know some old timers don't use outside sleeves. I start using outside sleeves. I can never buy enough outside sleeves to do my entire collection. So what I basically do is the rare ones, the ones that I know are expensive, hard to find, the ones that have shrink on them, I cover these. I cover the ones that have original shrink on. And original shrink on a record will not warp the record, in my opinion. I've always kept the shrink on. If I buy a used record and it has a shrink on, it's the first thing I do is put this on. So, okay, if I'm doing this right, this should be tip 8 or 9. And also, just be aware that records are very fragile. That's number one. They could crack. You could easily scratch them. So handle them with care. I've seen some people handle their records with those plastic medical gloves, but you don't have to go that far. Just don't touch the record. Try to keep your fingerprints off the record, because that's detrimental to the album, because the oil from your skin will get into that. It gets into your stylus, and eventually, it's not good. It's clogging up your stylus, and it's going to get into the grooves of your record. Now, tip 8 or 9, I've lost track at this point. Do not use the hard PVC or thick sleeves that you see like this on your record. Now, I've got these from libraries when I bought records from library estate or estate sales. And what people have done is they'll take the record out and they'll stick it into this sleeve, and they'll put the jacket on one side. Now, these look good, but these are like a hard PVC. And what happens is there's a chemical reaction that happens with the paper, and most likely it happens with the vinyl, that causes something to do with the PVC that breaks down. It hits your vinyl, causes a cancer in that vinyl, or a ghosting sound. And what you'll do is you'll basically degrade your quality of your record. So do not use, if you have something in these, take them out, use this for something else, for magazines or whatever, but that'll even break down the paper eventually. But these PVCs are old. This was probably from a library that had all their records on a shelf. If you remember, back in the day, records were loaned out at libraries. Now it's CDs loaned out at libraries, okay? Now, when buying used records from a yard sale or a flea market or if your neighbor gives you a bunch of records, always wipe those records down. I'm talking about not the records, but the jackets. Always try to wipe them down with a non-alcoholic wipe, such as a baby wipe. Do not use an alcoholic wipe that has any type of chemical in it. They usually will state on the label that they're safe to use. If they're safe to use on a baby, they're safe to use on a jacket. Obviously, you don't want to use it on a matted jacket, such as on the border which is the Eagles. Those early jackets are really matted paper. They're flat. Always use them on any gloss jacket, such as this gloss jacket. This will clean up very nicely. It dries. You could dry it with another paper or towel or whatever, but it'll probably just dry in the air. So that keeps out all that mold smell. It'll reduce it from contaminating your other records when you put them in the shelf. What I also do is once I clean a bunch of records, sometimes I'll buy 20 records at a yard sale, and I could smell them, not when I'm at the yard sale, but as soon as I get them in the house. And you could smell that. You could smell that must. Like going into a thrift shop and you get that smell. That's what your records pick up, because paper will absorb that, and then it has to release. It releases it into your environment. What I'll do is after I clean them, if it's a nice day, if it's not a humid day, if it's humid, don't do this. If it's a nice dry day, put them on the porch or outside and let them air out, and that will get a lot of the smell out. Also, try to do the inside of the jacket if you can with your hand, and try to get that, because the smell is also in the inside of the jacket. Okay? Now, I was talking about keeping your records away from, say, a hot water heater or in your basement where there might be pipes. You could keep them, if you don't have enough room on your shelves, which I don't, you could keep them in tubs, plastic tubs. Now, there's all type of plastic tubs. There's crates. This crate's great just to store your records. I put these in my living space where I'm listening as records that I'm going to play or records that I've just played. I'll keep them in here so I could get to them easily. But if you're going to keep them in the basement near a water heater or things like that, you want to keep them in plastic tubs. Now, plastic tubs such as this is just an example. But these plastic tubs are not good because the contour inside the plastic tubs bows toward the end of the tub. And what that will do is that will bend a square 12 by 12 album. So you don't want to use these type of tubs. If you see these type of tubs, use them for something else. But it's hard to show here. But this has like a bow in it, and the record will not fit properly in this. And I've used them as real temporary. But don't use them, because if you keep them in there for a few years or a few months, those records that are in that end, that bows, you will bend your records, you will warp your records. Always try to get something like this, which, as you can see, is straight across. This will not harm your records. You could actually put a top on it. You could actually stack these. This is also good if you're going to keep your records in a shed. I don't recommend keeping your records in a shed or outside in a garage, but if you must, keep them in that. Seal it up real good with a top or some type of cover, and your records should be good to go. Of course, you want to make sure that the shed or the garage is not damp and there's no humidity in there. So you want to think about that, all right? So that's just a couple of tips. But the main tip is keep your records clean. And what I mean by keeping your records clean is if you buy a used record, say from a flea market or whatever, even a new record, try to clean your records using either distilled water with like a chamois that's a non-lint record. If you don't have a record cleaning machine, if you have a record cleaning machine, like a vacuum cleaner or a nitty-gritty one that you turn on your own, that'll clean your record. What that does is it protects your record from excessive wear, because the dirt is going to be grinded into that groove. And more importantly, as far as costs, it's going to save your stylus, it's going to save your cartridge a lot of headaches, because that cartridge is going to gum up, and then that will ruin every preceding record, and it will eventually, you'll hear that static. So always keep your stylus clean and always keep your records clean. So that's about it. Those were 10 or 12, 13 tips. Basically, keep your records vertical, keep them out of damp climates. Don't ever store your record in an attic. An attic gets hot, an attic gets cold. That change in temperature through the years are going to definitely destroy that record. And, you'll get mold in the summer. In the wintertime, that mold will freeze, and it's not a good environment, and it's not a good outlook for that actually record. Your records are very expensive. You want these records to last a lifetime. You want to hand these records down to your children or relatives or friends, or sometimes you want to sell these records. So please, hope you enjoy this record. If you haven't subbed, please sub, and wait till the end of this video, because I'll have some end screens up that'll give you some other tips on how to take care of your vinyl. I hope this helps. Please leave the comments below if I missed anything, but keep rocking and save that vinyl. They're very important, and they deserve to be kept in pristine condition. Take care. Ciao.